Alright, so the topic of this video has nothing to do with the game we're looking at, but I thought it would be fun to watch games while doing this and just get distracted by paying attention to the games. But I'm going to be talking about the 10 best players not to have returned to the site. So anyone we've seen play actively certainly counts as having returned, but even people that we saw for, the first week or have seen, play a few games and then disappeared or just appeared in chat and maybe made a second account because they had lost their first one and then didn't play any games on it. All players like that count as having returned. I'm just looking for the 10 players that have inarguably not returned. I excluded 2 from the list because I thought Ulti and Unfixable were from so long ago. I didn't want to include them. I did include some players from the early days that never returned since, but those were 2. They were both great. I'll talk briefly about them now. Honorable mentions. Unfixable won, I believe, the second site championship. We can find out. We have this beautiful shrine. Let's look. Nope, that was Firebrand. What do you think Unfixable won? All right, now I think it was Laguna. It's a fun game. Ah, there we go. Unfixable wins Laguna, beating Sabin, Mysterious Ass, who has quite an impressive tournament record, actually, with at least 2 wins, I think, against Delhi, one in Rhinoa, one in another format. Falcon was a very solid early player. No name. The incredible Mafi Josie, who was making all the semifinals in the early days, but never any further. And then Soaps in the finals, another really good early player. So he basically did that, disappeared, and that's all we got of him. So, and then the next honorable mention, Ulti. She made 2 finals early on in 4 tournaments, which is an unbelievable finals rate, one of the best ever. But very early and never grabbed the title, so I decided to skip past these 2. So in 10th place, we have the Patriot, who I'm actually a little surprised hasn't returned. He was a very active member of the community, both as a moderator and as a clan member and co-leader. A huge part of Elites, and I think a pretty decent-sized part of some other clans as well. Alright, we got a Z formation here. What's going on? That 2477 is pretty hard to deal with, right? So it has safety where in either 1 or 6 at some point for Yevon. So if Yevon starts with 2774 and 6, everything he has is safe, but he also can't take anything once Delhi blocks 4. So that's just a tie. So it looks to me like Yevon should be looking for a win here. Does he have any captures, and how does Delhi deal with the captures? He has 2 captures in 4, but Delhi combos back hard with 4772. So if Yevon starts with 2774 and 6, Delhi should of course play 7562 and 9. Can't get away with going in 1 there. So it looks like we're headed for a tie, unless there's something sneaky. You could imagine a situation where Yevon plays... No, you couldn't. I was thinking where Yevon plays 7, 5, 6, 2, and 4 at some point, comboing off 5, but that doesn't work, because Delhi's card for 1 also combos the card in 2. So I think Yevon's just going to block 1 here, and head for a tie. So 2, 7, 7, 4, and 1. Delhi, presumably at that point, plays 4, 7, 7, 2 in 4, and Yevon can play in 9 for the tie, because 7, 5, 6, 2 is no captures. Alright, back to the list. The Patriot. So I think probably most known as a community member, but ended up making multiple finals. 1 in one of the closed tournaments and 1 in a Rhinoa tournament. Nightwish was the star of that team, but Pat did very well. And he also earned a whole bunch of icons on his own. If I bring up the my leaderboard for Triple Triad, I think he's like surprisingly high up in just total icons. I'm going to find that in a sec, leave you on the game. But I was so impressed. I've talked about this before, I tell redundant stories, but I was so impressed when I played him sometime in 2011 when I thought he was kind of, a medium to weaker tournament player. and I played him in Rufus in the quarterfinals, and it was my toughest match of the whole tournament. And I played 2 all-time greats in that tournament run, but Pat was the one who just like picked a really good hand and just played really solid moves where I kept not finding advantage. And I think I won it after like 5 ties. I ended up having the stamina, but not actually able to outperform. Where is he at on this list? So he has 5 icons, which is tied for 26th to 32nd all time. 5 personal icons. And yeah, just very good player. Ended up with 35 tournament wins, which is tied 25th, 26th all time. Tied with Scythe, a tournament winner, just a little behind Mafi, Josie, and Midas. Ahead of Piggyman, ahead of Yevon, ahead of Tezuka. Alright, Yevon starts in 9. I'd assumed he would start in 1 just because this gives Deli the option to play in 1, but Deli's never going to go in 1 before Yevon has gone in 4. So I guess this is just going to be a tie as well. Unless I'm being stupid and Deli can go in 1. That puts him up 7-3, but Yevon flips back way too many things. So yeah, Deli's going to block 4, and Yevon can never take the combo in 6 there, because Deli's going to block in 6, Yevon can never take the combo in 4, because Deli's move in 1 will flip 2, which will flip 5, which will flip everything back. So, anyways, Pat in 10th. In 9th, we have Reanimator, and I think he, like Pat, got really good around 2011, but it took a little longer to show, because he kept getting drawn against Great Sephiroth, and he kept losing to Great Sephiroth, and that meant he wasn't able to go as deep in those tournaments as he certainly could have gone at that point, just because Great Sephiroth is so absurdly good. So he didn't break through for a while till around 2012. And then he went on this quarterfinal streak where, how many icons does he have total? He has 6 icons. I think he earned those 6 icons in like 7 straight tournaments, right? Where like his icon rate was just off the charts. And every time he'd reach a quarterfinals, he'd draw someone like Seto, and he would lose that matchup. He did not have good results against the very top tier, but he became so good at beating people weaker than him and beating high-level players. He has a great record against Sir Smokes, his very good friend, among others, that he was able to put together this fantastic run. And he also made the finals of Garland, which was a ridiculous run, and I think possibly the most impressive closed feat we've seen. So Garland was a double elimination tournament. And in the first round, he loses to Broccoli. And that puts him in loser's bracket, which means he's going to have to play like twice as many games to go far. But he beats Sakea. He beats Addy, a well-known, closed star who just as do this, one closed player of the year. He beats Flare, Apex, known by so many names. He beats Zan. He beats D. He beats Kazdan. So how many wins are we at now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight wins, which is normally enough to win you a tournament. Then he beats Yoshikin, 7. Then he beats Cliff, 8. Then he beats Yojimbo, 9. Then he beats Broccoli in a rematch for 10 straight tournament wins to win the loser's bracket, having lost in the first round to go to the finals. And in the finals, you can see Vid beat Emerald in winners finals. He beat Emerald in losers finals. He beats Vid to reset the bracket and then loses in grand finals to go 11-2 on the tournament. Unbelievable run, right? 11-2 is normally enough to have made 2 finals, right? A 5-1 and a 6-1 is kind of 2 finals, and that includes the 7-round days. Normally if you have a run where you go 11-2, you won a tournament, and you've got at least one other icon. Here, he just made the 1 finals, real heartbreaker, but incredible run. Alright, Deli and Yevon are playing again, so we'll go back to that game. I think it's more interesting to have open games up than closed, because as I can't see the cards enclosed, it's hard to say all that much. And Reye on my leaderboards ends up with 6 icons, more than Pat, tied with Diacon N-Type, Piggyman, Mafi Josie, Doom Train. A fantastic spot on that leaderboard for most wins. He ends up a little behind Pat at 32, but overall, just a really high icon rate. And on the icon rate list, I think he shows up. Yeah, he's in 41st there with 26% of the tournaments played, he won an icon. But that's basically because from 2009 through 11, he went out in the first round every time. And during his really good run, he was, 75% icon rate, which is the highest would be the highest of anyone who has played more than a few tournaments. Now, some of those people, if you cut their careers up, would end up higher, but still just absolutely crazy good. So he's my 9th place finisher. In 8th, we have Grat. Grat's very well known. Recently, I saw Turds doing something on the Fun account, and I saw the Fun account's record, and it is the most unbelievable account you will ever see. Like, if you click Deli's second account, right, you see 4,000 wins, 1,100 losses. That's absurd. That's way better win rate than, my accounts have, right? That's almost 4-to-1 win rate. And then you click something like Koner's accounts, and you see like 10,000 wins to 2,000 losses. You see like 5-to-1. And you click Jaguar Paw, and Jaguar Paw has like 6,000 wins to 500 losses, and that's like 12-to-1. Or actually, Koner's main account is more like 6,000 wins to 300 losses, and that gets you to like 20-to-1. Absurd. Absolutely absurd. You see Grat's Fun account? It's 21,000 wins to 300 losses. What? Like, just, oh my god. Like, 70-to-1 win to loss rate over, 25,000-ish games, including ties. Oh, just absolutely absurd. And he did it playing, like, weird rule sets, like kind of stuff with plus off or stuff missing rules you wouldn't expect that he was very good at handling the adjustments on. Given that, probably not as good a tournament player as you'd expect, which is to say, one of the all-time greats, but not quite as high as he might get. He has 40 tournament wins, which puts him ahead of Pat and Ray and tied with people like Sujiro and Foyer. How many icons does he have? I'm just so proud that I put this list together. You can see it here. Here's the icon chart, and tried to make it look pretty. And we're looking for Grat 5 icons, which is on par with this crew. I can't draw arrows. With Akiyama, Broccoli, Jaws, Kazik, Pat, and Cool Spot. But a bunch of semifinals. If you look at Ray, he had 6 icons. Only twice did he make the semis. Pat had 5 icons. 3 times did he make the semis. I think Grat should have it. Oh, only 2. Okay. I thought it was more than that. Anyways, so really steadily strong performer. I think if we look at win rate, he'll pop up. Let's go over to win rate. Is he not here? He had such a good win rate. I'm confused. Well, a player really good on a variety of rule sets who steadily performed really well in all the fun stuff and well in tournaments. I remember there was an Occult fan article kind of going like, Grat has the talent to just be the best, but hasn't brought it together in tournaments. I kind of feel that was the case, that he was clearly one of the top 5-10 players on the site for a while, if not even better, but not quite showing that in tournaments, even though he was still putting up top 10 performances. Still fantastic. Then we have Jaws. Jaws, sort of interesting player, didn't stick around that long, mostly in the early days, kind of 04 to 07-ish, which I guess is a fairly large chunk, but has this remarkable run where he basically never lost to anyone who wasn't really good. Like, all his losses are like Kaus Debonair, Delial, Seto, right? Kamikaze, right? His losses are, generally speaking, all to the best people. So sometimes he ends up going deep, sometimes he goes out early, but every time he is only losing to really good players. And he's clearly one of the most consistent players ever. On my leaderboard, I'll take a peek. For most wins, he ends up at only 23. Didn't play that long. But with just 23 wins, he did have 5 icons, as many as from people we've seen with well into the 30s and up to 40 wins. 5 icons. 4 of those icons, he made the semifinals. And I think he has 1 finals, I believe. No, he has 2 finals as well. So he's in the crew with like Kazakh for having made, and Chickeny and Midas for having made multiple finals without having ever won one. But it's a very impressive record, and he's someone of the people we've listed so far. Like, I would like to see Pat and Ray come back for personal reasons, but Jaws is the one I would be most interested in seeing how he did, because his results jump out to me as someone who is very capable of joining a really upper echelon group. If I find a list of people he lost to, I'm looking for it. Should probably take a peek at the game. They've been doing a lot of opposite corners so far. His losses: Cookie, Mafiosi, Sujiro, Karmazin, Kamikaze, Grat, Foyer, Seto, Kaus, Scythe, Kana. So, like, the 2 weakest players on those lists by far, I think, are Foyer and Scythe. And Foyer and Scythe are, you know, top 60, 70 players all time. Foyer and Scythe are very, very good. This is, you know, you compare to, like, say you compare to Grat, right? Grat, another excellent player. I think most would rank Grat and Jaws kind of similarly on an all-time list. And you look at Grat's losses, and there's names like Varncast, DA2, Mogwai, Forcistus, Slug. You know, and Slug was good, especially at that point. Slug was on a really good run then. But it's a list that has, and I skipped a bunch of names, but it has a list that has a lot more both mid-tier players, like Omega Weapon was a very solid mid-tier early player or stuff. But also has a lot more weaker end players on it. And Jaws just doesn't. It has 2 kind of mid-high tier players, and then everyone else is top tier. So I'm always impressed when I look at that. I don't think Jaws is the best to never win. I think it's pretty clearly, I think, Chickeny, and then in some order, Piggyman, Midas, Kefka are probably all ahead of him, ahead of Jaws. But he's in that convo, and he's more in that convo than I think people give him credit for. I think you hear Kazakh said a lot, and I tend to think Jaws is a little stronger than Kazakh. Though Kazakh's finals run was so good. Kazakh's finals run in Zell, I think, is the best finals run ever. As in, beat the toughest people on the way there. Or it might have been his Vincent finals run. One of them is just absolutely crazy, but we're not talking about him. 7th place was Jaws. 6th place, Broccoli. So Broccoli won the first site championship, disappeared for 7 years doing other stuff, including, really interestingly, some FF Tactics mods to make the game more difficult and more complex, which is something I always intended to dive into, but I've been on a Mac and the emulators I've tried have trouble with modded PS1 games. So I've never been able to try this stuff, but I love FF Tactics, and I love doing challenge runs on FF Tactics. So someone who has explored the game and made it more difficult and found ways to solve it than I have approached, I think that's really cool, and I'd honestly love to learn more about that. And I am more invested in FF Tactics than I was back when she was around, so I'd love to hear about the work there. I assume she's moved on from that stuff. This was like 9-10 years ago, but I think it was very interesting. So she goes away from the game, and then she comes back and immediately wins the next site championship. So she has 2 tournament wins. They're both site championships. Most of her success was in site championships. I think, aside being a very good open and closed player in general, she was phenomenal at building hands for closed and open/closed. And I think that's where she really found serious advantage against other people. I think in general, In open, for instance, pairs are very appealing. They are incredibly powerful cards that play well against each other. In closed, that can give the opponent information you don't necessarily want to give. You know, if you use Silver Dragon, you're probably using Harloot as well. And maybe those cards are powerful enough that giving them that information doesn't change anything. But a good closed player will be aware of the cards you're using. And a bunch of important games and site championships were decided by someone having an overly predictable hand and the other person being able to make an endgame decision because they knew what cards must be held at the end. So I think Broccoli did a really nice job of building synergistic hands where what the cards were was not obvious from what she was doing or what other cards she played, right? So if she used Silver Dragon, maybe it would be paired with something like 4-6-7-6, something that isn't that exact pair and can have some slightly different effects. And maybe that card just has the same effect, so maybe that wouldn't be the pair. But I remember this Eiko hand, and Eiko was not a paired card, but it had a bunch of synergy with the other cards, and was an effective closed hand. And I think there is a difference in open and closed hand making, and the evidence is probably that she adjusted to that better than anyone. You'll also notice she made winners finals in Garland, which was another fantastic run, ended up coming third in that tournament. Across the board, there's a case, best tournament closed player ever, and a very good open one as well. In 5th place, we have Karmazin. Short-term player. I used to think Karmazin was the best player on the site. In 2008, I went back and forth whether I thought it was Delial or Karmazin, but a fair chunk of the time, I thought it was Karmazin. And most of this was just seeing him play open trade most days, and just, I didn't see him lose. And eventually I saw him play some matches with Deli and with Koner, where it seemed like those matches were pretty even, but it seemed to me he crushed everyone else at what I thought was probably the most skilled version of playing we saw. His tournament record is he played 2 tournaments, he won 1, he made quarterfinals of the other, I think losing to Sujiro. I think that was in Eris. No, Sujiro beat Kamikaze in Eris. Then I think that was in, I think it was in the tournament Beast Day won. What did Beast Day win? Maybe Kyros? No, Doc Evil won Kyros. Cypher? No, I think he won Cypher. Yeah, Karmazin wins Cypher, a 7-rounder, beating people like Jaws, Black Bolt, Dorf, and Kefka in the finals. You'll notice a great run by Jadat here too, who we will be getting to shortly, and who we will not be getting into this video. Why didn't I write down Jadat? Jadat should obviously be in this video. I've completely screwed up the video. You know what we're going to do? We're going to cut Karmazin, because he played too few tournaments. We're going to say Karmazin is not on the list. We're going to say 10th Patriot, 9th Ray, 8th Grat, and we're going to stick in Jadat in 7th. Then Jaws in 6th, Broccoli in 5th. Jadat, I've been thinking a little about his style of play as I was intending to make this video. Very weird I didn't actually write him down, because he was sort of the person I was thinking about as, oh, that's a snarky person I miss and wish was still around. But I was actually thinking, Jadat and Yevon, I think, have a bunch of things in common. Here's my case for Jadat is quite similar to Yevon. Both of them had a finals run in 2006 where they lost to 2 players who I'm pretty sure were the same person. Not actually sure, they weren't. But Yevon makes the 5th site championship finals and loses to Kamikaze in 2006. And Jadat makes the Eris finals and loses to Sujiro in 2006. It is one of the great finals runs. If we bring this up, he was in the lower half of the bracket, and he beats Darkseid, he beats Sanchez, he beats Ronin Jin, that's the first Salvador opponent, MMDE, pretty soft run into the Icon rounds, but then he beats Bren, and this was Bren in his absolute prime, coming off having just won Triad Wars 3. Then he beats Necro, and then he falls to Sujiro. It's a 7-rounder. It's solid opponents. It's a nice run. And he also had that semifinals run right next to it that we just looked at in Cypher. And I think in the end, like, Jadot clearly has a better tournament career than Yevon. But they both have this thing, if they get one finals in 2006, a couple nice results around it, and then they kind of fade away. They have less activity, their results don't come as much. They're still very well respected as players around the community, but they stop being serious tournament threats after that. Though notably, Jadot was picked to win a tournament in an Occult fan prediction thing. When he looked like he was rounding into good form in 2012, I think. Sadly for him, Yojimbo, who was not yet in the bracket, ended up being put in the bracket and immediately beat him. But, you know, that's going to happen. I also think another interesting comparison between Jadot and Yevon is both of them are really drawn to weird side starters. A lot of people only play side starters when they have the maximum number out facing, right? On level 10, a 10 out facing, or on level 7, an 8, or on, you know, level we're looking at, 5, a 7 out facing. But they're comfortable playing side starters with much lower numbers out facing. And Jadot was kind of the first person I saw doing that a lot and very effectively. And I think Yevon is the person doing it most regularly now. So I think they might also be kind of similar stylistic players, of often starting in ways that aren't standardized in the community, that are very much their own kind of figuring out of how the numbers fit together. And I think Yevon usually does it when you can't play safely in the neighboring squares, and Jadot did it a little more vaguely and strangely than that. But still, both players unorthodox in their strategies and effective in them. So it would be nice to see Jadot back. He is my pick for 7th place. So 10th Pat, 9th Ray, 8th Grat, 7th Jadot, 6th Jaws, 5th Broccoli. In 4th, oh good. I always get worried when Deli gets down to like 5 seconds because sometimes he just doesn't move. But also I'm just worried he won't move. What's happening here? Let's give this a quick look. If 7, 4, 5, 6, and 6, Deli has the combo in 5. Though that can be comboed back, right? Then 7, 6, 4, 3 has combos in both 4 and 8. So does 7, 6, 6, 2. 7, 6, 6, 2 only has 4. Okay. So you can imagine if Yevon plays in 6 and Deli goes 5, that Yevon might be able to go 7 there, leaving both combo squares open for last turn. That is possible. I'd be a little worried about that, but we'll get to that. What's the other captures? Yevon can also play 7, 6, 6, 2 and 6, or 7, 6, 4, 3 and 6. He can also play in 4. And sometimes in these positions you can go in 5. This doesn't feel like a 5 position to me. Obviously there's occasionally moves in 7 or 8, but I think 4 and 6 are the first places to look. So if you're Yevon here, does 7, 4, 5, 6, and 6 work? Because if Deli can't go in 5, you're going to play something like 7, 6, 6, 2, and 5 next turn, and you're probably just winning. So I think that kind of forces Deli to play 5. It feels like he has to play Elnoil there. You know, 5, 5, 7, 2 walks into some of the same combos, and 7, 6, 6, 1 might save but seems weak. This looks promising for Yevon. Okay, 7, 4, 5, 6, 6 ties up the game, even score, because currently it's 6, 4 Deli. Deli plays Elnoil, 5, 3, 7, 6 in 5. He combos everything. He's going to be up 8 to 2. Does Yevon win there? Deli has a combo back in 4 but not in 8. So the first question is, can Yevon combo in 4? Or should Yevon combo in 4? So say he played 7, 6, 6, 2 in 4. He only combos back 2 cards. Well, I guess he flips 3 cards because he flips 1 back. So he's going to flip 1, 2, and 5. Not in that order, but those are the 3 cards he flips. That makes it 5, 5. And Deli should tie there. Deli can go, I guess there's a few different ties there, but Deli could play, for instance, 7, 6, 6, 1 in 7. I shouldn't say a few different ties. That's the only tie. Okay. So I think Deli has a tie there. What if Yevon, instead of going 4, goes in 7 and leaves the combos open? But then Deli can just go in 8 because Yevon's only flipping 3 back. Alright, I think Deli holds there. Now Yevon can also play in 4 or use one of the other cards in 6. I think the other cards in 6 are much less likely to be strong. It seems to me Deli should be able to go 7, 6, 6, 1, and 5 and get at least a tie. Yeah, I suspect Deli's gotten a tie here, but it's definitely Yevon looking to win. To try to find something. It's been a good matchup, by the way. This is game 4, and also Deli and Yevon have had really good matchups in the past. In both chat tournaments they've met, Yevon has actually won so far. So I'm rooting for Deli to get revenge here, but so far the randoms haven't come together, and he's been very on the defensive. Yevon has played very well. Will Yevon play to move in 4? Yevon has been so sharp. I do think it's a good move, but I do think Deli can tie in 5. Critically, Deli locks in the cards in 3 and 6. So even though he is comboed back, Yevon does go in 6. So even though Deli is comboed back... Oh, he doesn't go up 8-2. He goes up 7-3. Doesn't actually change my evaluations of anything. Let's just make sure. Noil in 5. Deli's up 7-3. If Yevon goes in 8 with 7-6-4-3, he combos back. He takes 4 cards. He will lead 7-3. Oh. No, he will lead 6-4. He will lead 6-4. Yeah, he combos back 3 cards. He will lead 6-4. And Deli can play 7-6-6-1 and 4 for a tie. If he goes 7-6-6-2 and 8, Deli can just block 4. That's fine. Specifically blocks it with 5-5-7-2. Alright, so they had this all figured out, I think. I think this is just a tie. I think there's a bunch of ways for Yevon to attack it. He can go 7, he can go 4, he can go 8. But I think it's all ties, so let's get back to the list. Number 4, Diacon N-Type. So D is a player of 2 peaks. He first peaks around 2007, late 2006 into 2007. He makes a semifinals in TTA C5. I think he makes another semifinals in quick succession. Then he disappears for a while. And sometime around 2009, 2010, kind of as Karmazin stops being the person playing a lot of open trade, D comes in and starts playing all of the open trade. And actually, they're kind of similar stylistic players, D and Karmazin. Both very aggressive and combative, constantly doing things that interact with the decisions you're making, and setting up a lot of combo synergy. We could think a Delial style player. I think they're all sort of in that same category type. But then D does 2 things that really push him from being, one of the very good players who clearly incredibly talented but hadn't quite had the tournament success into a top 20 all-timer. And one of those was he kept knocking Yojimbo out of tournaments. He ends up with a 4-1 record against Yojimbo, which is the best any player has. And Yojimbo's run in 2012-13 is probably the best run anyone ever had. But if Diacon hadn't been there, it would have been the best run anyone ever had by a large margin. So 7-6-6-1 and 7 was the tie here. I did claim there were multiple ties. That was wrong. But 7-6-6-1 here should tie. And we'll be going on to game 5. This has been a very good match. Yevon has so impressed me in the time back. I have him in my top 50 all time, but he was very much at the edge of the list, and I wasn't all that sure of him as a player. You know, sometimes people get a few results and like happen to get rule sets they're good at, and you're not sold they're a great player, but he's been so good in this return. All right, in third place, we have Vid. So Vid ended up beating Ray, who we talked about earlier, to win the Garland finals. He also won Nanaki, and I think has a really nice run in Nanaki. Let's bring that up. All right, Vid. Beats FF Player 7, really underrated player who's taken out a lot of greats, beaten me, beaten Delial, beaten, I think, a couple others of the greats. Beats Yoshikin. No, I guess he got an activity win against FF Player. Okay, beats Yoshikin, then beats Piggy and D, and Kamikaze, and Nightwish. That is a very, very strong run of 4 players. So, super deserved. I do have a screenshot. I got it from Cool Spot of the final position in Vid Nightwish. And because they had very similar hands, we can tell who had most of the cards in their initial hand, right? Because if both players use, like, say, Squall and Cypher, you know, you see 2 Squalls and Cyphers. Ooh, this is interesting. What's going on here? Open trade. Who's MIDI Fip? Kind of guessing it's Fips, but I don't know who this is. All right, we're going to keep an eye on this. In fact, I'm going to type down the moves because this seems fun to watch. What account number were they? 46114 for Seto. Okay, so we're going to definitely keep an eye on this one. But, what was I talking about? Vid. Yeah, so Vid wins the first closed tournament and over a lot of rounds ends up losing in the finals to Ray, but because he had come through winners and Ray had come through losers, Ray already had a loss. So Ray has to beat Vid twice, and Vid wins in the grand finals to become the winner of Garland, wins Nanaki in a really tough field, as we just saw. Vid was always good. You go back to some earlier results, Vid has a very early semifinals, disappears for a while, comes back in the 2010-11 range, is active in a bunch of clans, Elite Four and Brotherhood of Seed. I think really important to both those clans. Also really interested in the history of the site, which makes me also wish Vid would come back for those purposes, because I have been putting a lot of effort into statistics and stuff for the site, and Vid was the one who kept the achievements list and a leaderboard for that has been very useful to me in finding stuff. And so Vid was someone kind of, I think, similarly interested, like myself, in piecing together as much as we had of things and what of the history we have and comparing cases and, you know, looking at it as an interesting competitive game or sport. So, I don't know. Vid's someone who I would, you know, like to interview on their thoughts on a bunch of things, because I think they had a lot of interesting thoughts. They're also someone who I think was either in or out on TTA, and maybe better that they're out, but I would prefer them to be in. Of course, I'd prefer everyone to be in. But Vid is my third placer. In second placer, and now we're really hitting the best of the best, and you could argue this person is in first, but I think you'd be wrong. We have Doc Evil. So we came kind of close to this in getting Nimloth back for a day. But Doc Evil, I might underrate his just like general importance to the site, because he did a lot of the programming for both the site and for Triple Triad Center, which was really useful, especially if you were building hands, because you could search for cards that had like a 7 to the right and a 9 up and unknown in the other 2 squares, and it would show you all the cards that fit that, and was really useful for piecing together hands. I don't think I used it as much as I should have, but it was a very useful feature. So did a bunch of the programming. I think might have done some deck design, ran some events, wanted to run more league format stuff that would really test you rather than elimination formats where, you know, you just have to do well over 5 or 6 games. Instead, in a league format, you have to do well over many more and against a much wider range of opposition strength. And then, of course, there's his tournament results. He played 3 tournaments, he won 2 of them, he made finals of the other. Fantastic run. And my winner pick for... we're going to see if the next Delial Yevon game has started. It has not, so we'll stay here. My winner pick for the best player to not return should be no surprise to anyone. It is Yojimbo. Yojimbo is atop so many leaderboards. He's one of 2 players with more than 100 tournament wins. For comparison, I have 60. He's over 100. He has 7 championships, the all-time leader. He's been in 13 finals, which, you know, may not sound that much more impressive than 7 championships. You know, okay, he won slightly more than half his finals. That seems normal. But his 13 finals is so far ahead of the field. Second place is Seto with 8. You know, Yojimbo's on 13. Even if you made finals at like a 40% or 50% clip, which is an absurdly high clip that is not really attainable, but even if you made finals at that kind of clip, it would take you, you know, to match his 5 led finals, it would take Seto 10 more tournaments to catch up, right? That's like 2 years, 2 to 3 years of active tournament play. This is an enormous lead. Similarly huge is his semifinals lead. Seto is again in second with 11, and Yojimbo has 16. This also means Yojimbo's semifinal win rate is he's been in 16 semifinals, and he won 13 of them. You know, what's that? That's too much. It's not like semifinals opponents are easy. And his icon rate, he has 21 icons, tied for first all time with Delial, and that also means 16 of his 21 quarterfinals he won. So he's putting up over 75% win rates in both the semifinals and the quarterfinals, which are not easy rounds. So I think Yojimbo is probably the consensus pick for greatest of all time, a very reasonable pick. I think a good pick. Obviously, I like to argue for myself, and I also like to make arguments for Delial, Seto, and Doc Evil. But I think there is a very legitimate reason for him to be the overall greatest of all time pick. And he is the player that the site's return is probably most missing. And he had a lot of kind of active rivalries with very good players here. You know, he had a rivalry with myself, obviously, after I was gone. He had a rivalry with Akiyama. They were probably the 2 best players on the site, unless it was Deli. And Delial versus Yojimbo was also a really fascinating rivalry. Yojimbo versus Seto was a really good matchup. They faced in a TTAC finals, and Seto won the Open, but Yojimbo won twice on closed. And I think Yojimbo, for just kind of all-around ability to do everything, is kind of untouched except by Deli. Like, he was a great hand builder. He was a great closed hand builder. You know, he understood the differences between different sets. He was capable of building tournament hands around different types of starters, corners, sides, center starters. He was very adaptive to what he thought were his opponent's weaknesses. Adjusting to, if you like cards more than you should, he will set up to punish those specific card choices. But also looking to play different types of starters against different types of players. I think through 2011, he was excellent, but not quite in that super top tier. Most people think he was. I think he was not until the end of 2011 when he became a complete supernova. And maybe he was good before the incredible tournament results came in. But I think until then, he dropped too many games to lower tier players and didn't have that good a head-to-head record against the best either. He was very good against the strong, but not as good against the best or against weaker players. And in 2011, he basically started losing to no one except Icon and Tight. And, you know, Doc Evil wins 2 tournaments in 3. Yojimbo does that twice. Yojimbo wins 4 and 5 or 4 and 6, I think, if you include a Rhinoa. But for just single player tournaments, he ends up winning 4 and 5, which I think has never been touched, and I think will never be touched. And even after those are over, I don't think he ever wins another tournament after that, but he makes finals in every tournament he plays after that until he stops playing. It's the most dominant run Triple Triad has seen. Again, he is an excellent pick for greatest of all time, and he is someone I think we kind of expected to return, and it has been surprising to see him not return, and it would be really interesting to see what would happen if he does. On the other hand, like with many of the other people on this list, there's many of them who maybe it is much healthier or very good that they have found other things or are not here. And I don't want to say people like, Grat should come back, because I think, for a lot of people, it is better not to be here. And that may actually be true for everyone on this list, which may be the reason why they're not here. But all 10 of them, I would be fascinated to see return, both for tournament play, but also like people like Jadot was just fun to have around in chat, both because I made terrible jokes about going to the sauna in Finland, and because, he was a very good player too, but a fun presence. So those are my picks for the 10 best players that we've not seen hide nor tail of. And I guess we'll see what move Seto makes, and then we'll talk a little about it, and then I'll shut down the video. Seto's such a quick player. This is a 5-minute game, right? Yeah. Okay. So his card is threatened in 4, but not 2. I think the main squares to play in these setups are 2, 3, and 6. Probably not in that order. Probably goes 3, 2, 6. We just saw Deli playing 3 in a comparable structure. 3 looks pretty well covered, right? That looks unlikely. So then I think you're on 2 or 6. Normally I'd look more at 2, but here, because the opponent has no threat in 2, 3, 2, and 4 I meant. Here I'd look a little more at 4 just because it locks a card in. The game is quite likely to be really side to side at that point, so I'd be tempted to use up a card that isn't side to side, but I'm not sure which card that would be. I think you really want to hold on to Vincent. Vincent's 9 to the right should be very strong, something that Midi Phipps' hand cannot deal with. Oh, obviously, this is Midas and Phipps playing together. Duh. Okay, I'm an idiot. Alright, of course, Seto makes a move I did not consider at all, of a weak corner in a square I did not consider. This happens all the time and is reliably just excellent. I'm glad I caught a game of Seto doing this, because it's very much Seto's style. Is this kind of weak card that is very easily taken, but that interacts with what the opponent's doing and doesn't give near as much ground as it looks like it does, right? Because it creates this threat in 8, and if Midi Phip blocks 8, then presumably 9A64 lands in 4, and Seto has found a way to lock in the card in 1 from 4, but without the card in 4 being vulnerable, right? Because with the card in 1, it was only attacked by 4, so you could block 4 to lock it in, but that card in 4 would have been very vulnerable. It would have been quite easily attacked. Here, he's trying to set it up so that card is 4 and 4 is safe, because 7 is already blocked, and locks in that card in 7. And if Midi Phip goes 8, he gets 4, and if Midi Phip goes anywhere else, he has a serious threat in 8. Oh, very interesting. Now, one thing I notice is he's got the same card for 2. Riku to capture in 2 is the same card that makes the threat in 8. So if Midi Phip did something in 4, I could see Riku being overworked. She can only land in one of those squares, and without her in the hand, there might not be enough power to play for a win. And you could be in trouble too. Really good move. Really good move. I also wonder... I kind of want to play for Midas Phipps 8, 6, 9, 6, and 5. But it doesn't do very much. Or say Cipher in 5. Let's say 6, 9, 8, 4, and 5. The idea is to leave Waka for 4 and 8 and put 8, 6, 9, 6 in one of 2 or 3. But I think that's just groveling for a tie, and I'm not sure it gets it. So that's where I'm looking. It just looks interesting to me. Trying to pair up the board in a favorable way. Maybe it does work. If Seto replies in 8 with Riku, takes everything but 5, and then they could go Waka in 4. That takes 2 things, making it 5-5. And yeah, that should be a tie. So I think Cipher in 5 is probably a tie here, but I'm not sure. What else is there? I'd also consider 4 and 8. It's pretty hard to go in somewhere like 3, I think. But maybe 3 is possible, maybe 2 is possible. It's just hard for me to see moves there. Man, Seto complicates really well. This is actually kind of interesting because in the finals of Nephilim, Seto and Midas played a match with this same setup, rotated, but with cards in equivalent squares, and Midas played a corner move like this away from the action. And I was expecting Midas to have gone in the equivalent of 2. I thought 2 looked strong. But instead he went in, well, here is the move in 7, and it ended up not working at all because it set Seto up for a plus in 8 that Midas just didn't see. And if there wasn't that plus, Midas would have tied. But with that plus, it was a losing mistake. So interesting to see Seto get back some of his own medicine. He goes in 4. All right. So this is the idea of, can we overwork Riku? Riku is the key card in your hand. Can we run Riku out of things to do? So if Riku goes in 8, 3 cards flip. The score is currently 7-3. So that would make it 6-4. Either of Midas's cards in 5 make it 6-4 back. And specifically, 8-6, 9-6 in 5 wins. Because Seto has no captures and will be down 6-4. So Riku 8 loses. What about Riku in 2? Riku in 2 makes it 6-4. And the idea is, against any move in 3, can play Vincent in 5. And I think he's going for it because he sees things faster than I do. And Vincent in 5 can only be taken by 8-6, 9-6, which means 8-6, 9-6 can't, you know, if you want that capture at the end as Midas Phipps, you can't put 8-6, 9-6 in 3, but 6-9, 8-4 in 3 doesn't capture Riku. So I think we're headed towards a tie here. Really interesting game. Really interesting game. I will have fun exploring this one later on my own. But I think we will be seeing Riku in 2. Riku goes back down. Now, reasons that could be. One is Seto is thinking Riku in 8 and has realized that doesn't work. 2 is Seto was looking at Riku in 2 and for some reason I don't see, has decided that doesn't work. I think that does work. That definitely does work. So I think that can't be the reason. So I think the other reason is he has seen some, either he was looking at Riku in 8 and has discarded it, or he thinks there might be something else appealing besides Riku in 2. Because Riku in 2 is a tie, right? Cypher in 3, you go Vincent in 5. Cypher didn't capture anything, you capture 2 more things, you go up 6-4. They capture 1 back, tie. If they go Edge in 3, you still play Vincent in 5, you capture 2 things, it's 5-5. And Cypher can't flip you, so it's a tie. If they go in 5, they cannot capture Riku, and at the very worst, you can go in 3 with Vincent, which is a plus there, so it flips 6, tie. And lastly, Midi Fips could go in 8, but anything in 8 can be captured by Vincent. So Vincent will go in 5, it needs a plus to capture Edge, but it captures both, which will get that one a tie as well. So Riku in 2 is a tie, and it is what we see here. And I guess with that, we'll call it a video. Sorry, this one was a bit disorganized, and I changed my rankings mid-video, but you know, got some interesting games in here, and talked about some players I'm probably not going to get to talk about very much for the exact reason I talked about them here. They're not back. Peace.